To you, Laura, I wanted to show you a great image from Egypt. Take a look at this. Posted by Tol Oli on Twitter, this image shows a happy bride and groom beginning their honeymoon with the protesters in Tahrir Square. That's them standing in front of an armoured personnel carrier. It's not perhaps the way everyone would want to start a married life, but we wish them well. Back to you.
Certainly we do. It will be a brand new start at least. Thanks very much for that, Steph. OK, well, let's go over to Tunisia now, where at least 2 people have been killed after a police chief fired at protesters outside a police station in the north of the country. State media says the clashes in the town of Clef were sparked after the policeman allegedly slapped a woman during a demonstration. There are unconfirmed reports 2 more people died on the way to hospital, whilst another 17 were injured. The police chief has been arrested. More than 3 weeks on from the fall of President Zine El Abidine Ben Ali, no leading opposition politician nor party has emerged to push for key demands. Many opposition figures say they're not being included in the political process despite assurances from the interim government. Some even say they feel threatened. Nazanin Moshiri reports.
It was a frightening moment for opposition leader Monsef Marzouki as he made his way through the streets of the capital. This footage given to Al Jazeera shows a former exile set upon by what he says are plain-clothes secret police. He told me Ben Ali's security forces are still operating here freely.
We got rid of the dictator, but the dictatorship is still there. I mean, the secret police is still there. The party of the dictatorship is still there.
Praying for peaceful times. Rashid Ghannouchi was also exiled under Ben Ali, with many members of his Islamic Ennahda movement imprisoned or tortured. He says the new government isn't legitimate. His party and many other opposition groups have been shut out of the political process.
The people must protect their revolution if they value the achievement of toppling the dictator. The blood of the martyrs is in their hands, and not all their goals have been achieved. The street must be ready. The genuine opposition must come together to build on a common vision.
This is the man who could unite the opposition. Najib Chebi lived through Ben Ali's regime. Just a month ago, addressing his supporters like this would have been impossible. Now he has a real chance of becoming Tunisia's next president.
Don't have the right to fail. You know, Tunisia is now mature to establish a democratic regime and to begin real and just development.
The headquarters of the former ruling party, the RCD, has now been dismantled. Big questions still remain over whether there has been a break with the past. A promised investigation into corruption and human rights abuses has been criticised as slow and inefficient, and nobody knows when there's going to be a free and fair election. The opposition says it wants more time to prepare for those elections. Tunisia is now in uncharted territory. Building a new democratic nation is not going to be easy. Nazanin Moshiri, Al Jazeera, Tunis.
Well, we've got plenty more news still ahead, including...
I will not make age an issue of this campaign.
Drawing inspiration from a past president, Republicans mark 100 years since the birth of the late Ronald Reagan. And fans warm up for the Super Bowl Sunday, but forecasters say this year's sporting showdown is likely to go down a storm. The full story when we come back.
From local traders to international finance, it's commerce that makes the world go round. For global companies and developing markets, communication is the currency, and information is the most valuable commodity. Counting the cost at this time on Al Jazeera.
He's taken stolen goods and he's now dumping them onto the world without any sort of consideration for consequences.
From people making the news.
If the North will be saved a lot of trouble, I think it is important that they should come together.
To those it affects.
We do accept that there was very bad mistakes made in our banking area.
Behind the headlines.
Most South Koreans are not interested in reunification.
Is the inside story. At this time on Al Jazeera.
Decoding the stories that shape our views.
Those images catapulted the story back into the headlines.
Everything that I thought would be easy was hard, and everything that I thought would be hard was easy.
From mainstream media to consumer-led advertising.
There are other options.
What's at the front line of global media?
This has been reported worldwide.
With a major media angle to it.
Comparing news and challenging views. The Listening Post. At this time on Al Jazeera.
The main stories here on Al Jazeera.
Of course, that these trials will actually
From the world to your phone. Al Jazeera Mobile.
Hello again, let's talk some more about Egypt, and we can join Tamim Al-Barghouti, who's live for us in Washington, D.C. He's a professor at Georgetown University's Center for Contemporary Arab Studies. So we're looking at this latest development there in Egypt, the Muslim Brotherhood, due to hold talks with the government later today on Sunday. Do you think this is the move that's necessary to break the impasse?
No, I think that when you have a million people on in the square and millions all over Egypt, you're too strong to negotiate with anyone, and this government has lost its legitimacy since the 25th of January. And on the other hand, I think the government will not be serious in any negotiations. They just want to buy time, and from what I've been seeing in and around Tahrir Square, they have almost a military plan to besiege the demonstrators in the square, cut their supplies, and harass them with thugs every now and then until they break their morale. Now, it hasn't been working so far, but the plan is quite in place. I actually want to take this opportunity to ask the Egyptian Red Crescent and the International Red Cross to guarantee that supplies, food and medicine and blankets in cold weather reach the square. I know from people on the ground who have been trying to get medical supplies to the square that they are attacked by thugs. The medical supplies are taken, sometimes thrown into the Nile, and sometimes they are taken by the army. This siege has to end, and no negotiations can work under siege. We know that at least from the Palestinian experience.
But even if Mubarak does, for example, step down tomorrow, someone is going to have to step up to carry these negotiations forward. Who should that be?
Well, I don't think there should be any negotiations. As I said, people will have to decide, is this a protest that demands constitutional reform, or is this a revolution? Nobody talks about the constitution of Louis XVI or of the Shah of Iran or of Tsarist Russia when we are talking about a revolution. So people should not be afraid of power vacuum. In fact, people in Egypt throughout, and in Cairo in particular, have been running the city and the country in the absence of the government for the past week or so, and they've been doing it quite well. If it were not for the government paying thugs to disrupt law and order, the country would have worked quite well. So I don't think there is any need for negotiations. As far as representation is concerned, who represents the people in the square, well, we know the heads of all Egyptian parties and political societies, and they have been forming a number of committees. One of them included Baradei, Muslim Brothers, nationalists, liberals, and communists. And I think this broad coalition can take care of the affairs of the country once Mubarak, and I have to stress, his vice president, leave or resign.
OK, Tamim Al-Barghouti, we'll have to leave it there. Thanks very much for your thoughts from Washington.
Thank you.
OK, well, let's stay with Washington. We can get more news making headlines across the world. And here's Kimberly to give us that news.
All right, Laura, thank you. Well, Republicans are gathering in the U.S. state of California to mark the 100th anniversary of former President Ronald Reagan's birth. Now, for some politicians, the commemoration is a chance to connect themselves to one of the most celebrated icons of the Republican Party. Cody Akavi reports.
As an actor, he was overshadowed by bigger stars. As a president, few can match his legacy. But that hasn't stopped Republicans from trying to play the part.
I will not make age an issue of this campaign. I am not going to exploit, for political purposes, my opponent's youth and inexperience.
Ronald Reagan's self-deprecating manner endeared him to most Americans. And on the 100th anniversary of his birth, today's conservatives are lining up to salute the man and issue a warning.
Though government created the problem, now government presents itself as the solution.
America's 40th president sold himself as a champion of limited government.
In this present crisis,